You're listening to the Begin Within Health Show with Nate Slager. For more, go to beginwithin.fit/podcast, or to enroll right now in our flagship coaching program, go to beginwithin.fit/coaching. Here we go. I've got part of a previous episode for you today and some new content along with it. This is one of our most listened to interviews, and it was with, interestingly, a student by the name of Harshad Manglani, a student in India who started a podcast called the What Works for You podcast. And so I think in terms of, the experts that we've had here on the show, his approach was a little bit different, a little bit fresher because of his perspective on life. And his interview, like I said, has been one of the favorites that we've ever had here on the Begin Within Health Show. And I have been thinking about it so much because we recently made some adjustments to some of our marketing materials, which you may have seen. And something that I've been talking a lot about is the concept of making fitness fit you. We were working on boiling this whole thing down. What are we trying to do with Begin Within Fitness? What are we trying to do with the podcast, the Begin Within Health Show? And the answer is that we are trying to make fitness accessible. We're trying to make health improvement accessible by, instead of trying to make it so that you are trying to fit into someone else's idea of what fitness should be. Right? Like, here's the diet you got to stick to, or here's the workout plan. You got to make this happen in order to get what you want. This process works best. And maybe that's not even the right way to say it. Maybe this process only works when you approach taking fitness and making edits to it, adjusting it so that it fits you. It fits into your life. It's not about you trying to fit into someone else's idea of it. That never works. It never works for very long. And I'm coming to you as someone who put out a lot of plans and a lot of things that I was asking people to try to fit into in order for me to support them in their fitness. And what I found in the end, and the reason why I started this company, the reason why I started this podcast, is that the best way to do it is to learn what you can from the experts, from the research, and then make it fit into your life. Make it fit you. Then you can continue to move forward, and then you can continue to get results, permanent change, real change, and end up where you want to be, in a healthier place. Now, as I was thinking about all this, I thought back to this interview that I had because, you can hear it in the title of the podcast that came out of what Harshad had discovered. What works for you, right? Finding what works for you. And so he described the process of self-experimentation as he was working on changing his own habits. And I think you're going to really enjoy having another listen to this one if you've heard it before, or if you haven't heard it before, taking a listen to what we can learn from my interview here with Harshad Manglani. Please enjoy.
There was a minor incident and I had to send the bike to get fixed. And because of that, I started going in the bus and I had nothing to do on the bus. So I took a book that my dad had gifted me on my last birthday. It was actually a self-help book.
Okay.
I started reading it. Initially, it was just something to do while I was on the bus. It was like a 1 hour, one way. When I actually started reading it, I was like, this is so cool. And as I went on, the book mentioned listening to audio programs. I guess the book was old and I took that to mean podcasts. So I started listening to podcasts as well, like Shetty's podcast or the Tim Show. And I started getting deeper into all of these things and then taking those changes, applying it to my own life. It got to a point my friends were sick of me telling them all of this because I used to constantly be like, you should work on this, you should try doing that. And then eventually this year in Jan, I decided to try to share whatever I learned with the world,
Hmm.
basically. And I thought doing a podcast was a good way to do that.
Oh, cool. So it was like the
And
way that
that's
you
how.
had been learning through podcasts, and then you're able to use that same platform to share what you're learning.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, cool. So what about the name? Like, tell me about like the name of your podcast. What's behind that? I know I'm in that same world where you put a lot of thought into that. So tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. So I guess initially whenever I listen to a new concept or come across something that I could try out, for a while I used to struggle with the idea because that this is something I'm supposed to figure out anyway. If it has to work for me.
Okay.
And oftentimes it didn't, sometimes it did, right? Like, because you can't possibly have everything generalized and make it work for everybody. And I struggled to make it work for me. It didn't until I got to a point where I realized that, maybe this is not supposed to work for me. It worked for somebody else, which is great. And I wanted to have that idea normalized that
Hmm.
this is something you should always keep in mind, that just because it worked for Steve Jobs doesn't mean it has to work for you, you know. So that's how I came across the name. And yeah, I wanted to keep it generic
Hmm.
just to give me a little flexibility as to not completely narrow it down to a particular thing like self-experimentation only. So what works for you, I thought was a pretty generic title to go ahead with.
Okay. Got it. But it's so that area of self experimentation it seems like it's woven throughout, what you're sharing. So tell me why you feel like that's so important. Because I'm on the same page. Like, I think that's great. Tell me your perspective on self experimentation.
I think, whenever you come across something, right? For example, if you've come across manifestations, the idea of visualizing something and seeing the positive energies from the universe. I don't want to mock the concept, but it gives off the idea that, say, you just have to think about something and it'll magically come to you.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
then there are other
Boom.
things as
There it
well
is.
that exactly. And there are a lot of things that you need to actually try out and understand if it's going to work for you or not. Because what happens a lot of the time is the first thing is that you'll come across something, you keep delaying it to a point you want it to be perfect or you want it to be just right.
Hmm.
It's either that or the second thing is you'll probably judge it once and just go that, this is not something I'm built for.
Yeah.
But and that's I don't think that's the way to go, because then if you stop accepting beliefs on your own, that way you will never grow, right? You need to have an open, even for things you don't relate with, and just try them out once before you have an opinion.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. I think self-experimentation in general is a good thing. And another thing, of course, is that, you always have science studies with a lot of things out there, like, journaling, meditation, they have, say, positive benefits. But it's always good to like just try it out and just see for yourself that yes, this works, or maybe it doesn't.
Okay. So like what I'm hearing is experiment, but kind of make educated guesses based on the science that you can find available that applies to your situation.
Yes, I think that's true. I think even with that, when you do have these science studies going on, and it comes to generalization, take this big sample set of people, say 300 or 500 or whatever, and then that goes that into the work. And again, it may work for you. There's a good chance because that's a study that's been published.
Hmm.
It just might not. And to figure that out, that's where I think experimentation comes in. I think I'm
Yeah.
repeating myself
Yeah.
now, but yeah.
That's okay. I feel like too, like as you were explaining self-experimentation a little bit, that it almost and as opposed to like perfectionism, it when you view it as like I'm a work in progress, this is a process, it almost takes the pressure off a little bit, right?
That's true. It does.
Yeah. So I feel like that shift, and for our listeners, they're focused on fitness related goals, weight loss. improving strength, and maybe even just making these habits a consistent part of their life, right? That I feel like that approach would really benefit them rather than trying to like do everything perfect. Like, do you feel like that's true? And if
And
so, how so?
because, I think if you ever want, first off, I don't think that you can be like 100% perfect eating, no matter how hard
Yeah.
you probably just miss out on that last percentage of however you define perfection. That's
Hmm.
number one. And then number two is the reason I think experimentation is important is that the idea that don't try to fix something unless it's not broken is wrong.
Mm.
That's just wrong. If because what happens is eventually you will get complacent with whatever is working for you right now at this point. If you stop experimenting, and then that way you're just like flatlining your growth altogether. Some of the best experiences that I've had in life is when I tried to explore, even though something was already working for me.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
I think that's like a process of constant evolution, just working on yourself. Rather than, which again, the end goal would be somehow to become as perfect as possible, but it's important to not let perfection be a barrier for you to begin.
Yeah.
I want to get this just right, and that's when I'll begin. Otherwise,
Gotcha.
I won't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because what you're saying is once you reach, that place that you're shooting for, there's always going to be another place to go to get better.
Mhm.
So don't settle in on achieving that, but also don't think like that's the end goal, because if you feel that way, you're going to actually move backwards. Almost
Maybe
like
not move.
if you're not growing, you're dying. That saying?
Um, I guess that could be one way to look at it. One thing is definitely the point that you mentioned that it's important that you keep growing, but at the same time, I don't want to stress on growth because it's important to also celebrate what you've achieved so far. I think that's super important. If you're always constantly just trying to get better without and how far you've come, you might just lose something that drives you to get better in
Yeah,
the first place.
sure. Almost like I'm unhappy with where I'm at, and that's why I have to keep growing. Then you're using negative feelings to try to motivate you, and that doesn't really
Right.
work.
Right.
Okay, cool. So, is it okay if I switch gears a little bit and into talking a
Sure.
little bit about morning routines? I know I know you're busy. I want to be respectful of your time, but some of the work that you've done around that, I was really intrigued by, because I think, in terms of like, especially with fitness, that
Hmm.
that comes in the early part of the day for a lot of people who are consistent with it.
Right.
So, how did you kind of attack the process of looking at your morning routine and developing it?
I In the beginning it was really ad hoc. This sheet of paper where I wrote down 5 things I wanted to do. I think it was exercise, meditation, solving a puzzle, reading a book, and listening to a podcast. I think it was these 5 things, and I always consistently managed to skip out on meditation. And even I think solving a puzzle, I did the remaining three. And this was, I think, last year. And then eventually I started to come around the idea of meditating every day. It took a while to build that habit as well. Eventually, I came to tracking my morning routine, if I did these things every day or no, making checklists. And yeah, if there's a lot of shuffling, even the time I started my morning routine, the time at night when I slept, and just there was, I think, I've changed my morning routine at least 15 to 20 times over the year. There have been phases where I do it for 7 or 8 days at a time. And it's been a very bumpy journey, I would say, but recently it's become somewhat stable.
Okay.
On that atomic habits, I try to bring some of those principles and use them to build my morning routine better. And then I think that's when it changed and now it's pretty consistent, but it took a long time. I just think that two really important things the journey that I
Yeah.
learned was tracking is important. What gets measured gets done.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's essential that you have some sort of a tracking mechanism. And another thing is you want to keep it planned enough so that you're not spending a lot of time thinking in the morning, what should I do next? Then there's a lot of decision making that you need to do, and it just taps your willpower.
Okay.
You
Interesting.
are,
Cool. As you're talking about tracking, I was like, I wonder how much your focus on like computer science and
Mhm.
that process plays into the self-experimentation and how things went with your morning routine. Do you feel like that there's something to that?
I don't think with tracking, if you mean, using softwares to track, is that something you talk
Yeah, I
about?
just feel like that kind of that analytical, like, hey, like I'm gonna just try tracking it. What am I gonna try? Like I was like, oh, I don't I wonder if the average person would have come to that conclusion so quickly, or if there's something about your approach to it that had some extra value there. I don't know. I also thought it was interesting as you were talking about your setbacks and your failure,
Hmm.
you had a smile on your face. I was like, most people are like, yeah, I tried it, it didn't go well. Like they'd feel kind of disappointed. But
Hmm.
what's behind your kind of your smile to talking about your failures?
I, I think with the morning routine specifically, it because that, during those times when I did fail to like continuously and consistently for days at a time, not for it. It was like day one, I was disappointed. Day two, little more. And eventually it got up to a point where I'm so frustrated with this that I've had. Day nine, it's sort of starting to come back on track.
Okay.
And I just know that whenever there is a break like that, it occurs eventually. It'll happen maybe every 3 or 4 months. That frustration, that sort of stuff, or that disappointment built up, that is a very factor that gets me back on
Interesting.
track.
Okay. Cool. What particularly about the morning routine have you found is so valuable? I mean, like, could you do those things at a different time of day and get the same benefit? Or is there something to those morning hours that you found to be really kind of special?
I don't think, at least for me, it doesn't work doing those same things later in the day or in the evening. It's just not the same feeling.
Okay.
So there's a lot of reasons behind that. Number one is when you're doing something in the morning, it's something like exercise. Exercise, if you're not focused on, say, weight loss or a particular goal like that, your only idea behind exercise is to stay fit.
Hmm.
And it's something that you need to do every day, right? Or whatever
Yeah.
routine you follow in terms of frequency. So it's nice to get that out of say, your work day or your working hours in the morning. You have that checked off of the list. You're done with exercise. You know that you've done your part in
Yeah.
staying healthy, being fit. That's one. I've noticed that if I delay exercise until, say, the evening, it's harder to stop working or whatever it is I'm doing. Or if I'm watching a movie, it's just really hard to hit pause and go work
Okay.
out. In the morning, there's nothing like that actually distracting me from, doing that. And I know that I'm going to do this. It's much more fun and it's cooler. So yeah, so I think point one is you get it out of your work day right in the morning.
Okay.
And for the second thing is, you connect with nature a lot better. I
Huh.
love sunrises
Okay.
and every morning. Right now, I'm not going for exams, but otherwise, I usually go up to the roof. I take a book with me. So that's where I read, and I'm also like looking at the sky, and
Yeah.
it's really beautiful.
I've seen that on your Instagram, like some like the pictures of the morning
Yeah.
shots. Like it's awesome. I didn't expect you to say that about connecting with nature. That's really cool.
It's fun because since everybody's at home right now, you don't really go out like you used to.
Mm.
It's just a nice change of your environment right in the morning.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Anything else? Those 2 points, was there more, or were those the 2 that you wanted to share?
No, I think in addition to that, to bring up another point, it would probably be with meditation. It's easier to do it in the morning for some reason, at least for me.
Okay.
But again, there is a catch here. Before I meditate, I make sure to journal because
Okay.
if when you wake up, sometimes you have thoughts racing through your head. It makes it hard to meditate. So I just get all of them out on paper and then I meditate. So it's a nice, I would say, sequence to have.
Okay. Gotcha. I'm curious. I mean, I think like the main challenge that most people might have with the morning routine is getting out of bed. Is that
Right.
something for you that you've just always been an early riser? Like, I just wake up and I'm up, or was that something that you had to work on?
To work on it. I
Okay.
was not an early riser. I was
Do you have any tips on that? Like how to make those first moves in the morning out of bed?
sure. Tip one, your morning routine starts in the night before or the night before. Sleep
Okay.
on time. That's I think most people miss that because it's if you keep doing whatever it is, if you're working or scrolling or binging, if you're up till 12 in the night, you cannot expect to get up at the morning. That's just a very bad expectation to have. And even if you do pull it off, it's not sustainable over the long
Okay.
term to sleep 5 hours a night. So yeah, step one would be sleeping on time. I think there's a lot of research that is around your whole sleep cycle.
Hmm.
I found when I was doing an episode on that. Something I came across was, your body's internal clock that regulates your sleeping cycle. It releases hormones for you to feel sleepy. And then when you wake up, it makes you feel energetic. So those are regulated by a lot of things around you. For example, sunlight is an important, I'd say, factor that fits into my routine at least. I've noticed that whenever I get sunlight in the day or even in the morning, it's easier to fall asleep on time versus when I don't.
Okay.
And even for caffeine, I think whenever I have a cup of coffee or tea in the evening, I wake up in the middle of the night at like 2 or 3 a.m. Very randomly. I don't even know
Okay.
why. And that is something so these are these few things to just have
Interesting.
up on quality of sleep and to make sure that you actually follow through your sleep on
Interesting.
time.
So yeah,
But
so
it,
focusing on the morning routine starts with focusing on your sleep quality and your
yes,
sleep schedule.
yeah, that's right. It does take time. I mean, if you normally sleep around 11, then it'll take time for you to like slowly bring down to 9:30 or 10,
Hmm.
whenever it is you want to sleep.
Yeah. Wow. Cool. Thank you. Oh wow. All right. I already went OT on you. I'm overtime. One
That's
one
right.
final question. If someone was listening to this and
Mhm.
the idea of like the morning routine or even self-experimentation is just like totally brand new to them,
Mhm.
what recommendation would you have to help them get started? Like what advice would you give to someone like just to take those first few steps? Like how might they do that?
I would say start with trying to integrate one. It's talking about morning routines.
Hmm.
Don't try to do all of them once, like having exercise, meditation, journaling, deep breathing once. You can to like wake up 30 or 40 minutes before you normally do and just do one of those things. And once you think you have that set, move on to the next activity you want to have in the morning. And of course, sleep is important. You need to sleep on time. And for self experimentation, I think my advice would be to have an open mind.
Okay.
Just to be open to something that is completely against all of your beliefs and to try it out. And then if you still think it's not for you, let it go. But I would say, don't just like judge it or I'm not going to try this because I don't think it'll work. I think is something that might make you miss out on a really great habit or an opportunity to work on yourself.
Okay. Wow. Cool. Thank you. Hey, thanks so much for sharing your research and your thoughts with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a great conversation.
There it is. That one is such a mindset shifting theme, I think, throughout that whole interview. And the mindset is this: experimentation is good. Self experimentation is what this process is all about. It's what you have to do in order to really move forward, in order to really get real, permanent results and change. Quit trying to fit into someone else's idea of what you should be doing, and instead approach this as, how can I most easily adjust what health and fitness is so that it fits into my life? There's certain broad strokes, right? There's things that we have to do, but how can we make them fit us? Some things will fit in better than others, and the only way to find out what those are is to try. And then we adjust and then we try again. We keep trying, we keep putting effort forth. And I think the best experts in the field of health and fitness, they are helping us to do that. Take the research, take what we know and accept as kind of the truths of how to be healthier, and then how can you, from where you're at, have that fit into your life? Instead of saying, you got to eat this way, you got to move this way, this is the best way to do it. And now that you know it, go try to fit into that. Squeeze your life into that. It doesn't work. It does not work. And if you've tried it before, and you probably have, and that's why you're here, we got to stop doing it, right? So you're going to hear me keep talking about that. That is what this whole podcast is about. That's what Begin Within Fitness is all about. That's what our coaching program, incidentally, is all about. So if you haven't already taken a look at it, you can learn about it at beginwithin.fit/coaching, and you can get started there. We've got people that are getting started every single week. We begin on Mondays. It's a program that kind of runs with the days of the week. We access the motivation of Monday, and we get you fired up in the middle of the week when you might be feeling a little bit of a lull. And the weekend, we take some time to slow down and reflect and also prepare for the week ahead. So it's very much based on the ebb and the flow of the days of the week. And so every single Monday, we have, lately anyway, we've had new people starting, and it's so exciting to me. I'm so thrilled to be a part of their journey, to share what I know about making health and fitness fit them instead of the other way around. So if you want to check it out, you know where to go. There's also a link in the show notes. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks for being a part of this community, just by your support and listening, by rating and reviewing the show, by sharing it with someone who you think will benefit from this message. Thank you so much. I'll talk with you again soon. Please keep taking good care of yourself.